Hi, it's Grandma here, and I'm reading Adam of the Road, and today I'm reading chapter 11, Adam Swims the Wey, and the Wey is the name of a river. So why do you think he's swimming in the river? Maybe he's hot, maybe he has some nervous energy he needs to get out, or maybe he is trying to get to the other side and can't afford to pay a ferry. You see the ferry boat right here with people, and here are people waiting in line, and he doesn't want to wait, so he jumps in the river maybe. Well, we'll see. Adam swims the way. The road led down into the valley of a winding river fringed with trees. Roger would have been glad to stop and bathe here, but Adam urged him on. So Adam doesn't want to swim there. When we get to Guilford, we still have to hunt for Jenkins, he cried. He might get out of town before we find him. Well, this is a good place to eat our dinner, said Roger. They lay down at the edge of the stream and plunged their heads into the cool water. Coming up dripping and refreshed, they opened their wallets and took out their bread and cheese and cold meat. In spite of his impatience, Adam found that it tasted good. When they had finished, Adam was eager to start right off again. But Roger stood looking down at him as if there was something he wanted to say. He wanted to tell his boys something about life and chance and the perils that beset beloved little dogs. But unable to find the words, he just stood there looking compassionate and helpless until Adam begged, "Let's hurry, Roger." Under St. Martha's Hill, the path divided. One branch went through the woods called Chantries and crossed the River Wey by a ferry south of Guilford. The other led across Merrow Downs and over sunny Pewley Hill to the town. This was the shortest way to Guilford. Adam's legs were tired as he stumped up the last rise in the chalky path from which, in spite of yesterday's rain, a fine white dust was rising. They'd come nearly 12 miles uphill and down, and the fever of fear that drove him on had given him energy, but it had wearied him too. Now that is a bit of an oxymoron. His fear is giving him energy, but it's also weakening him and making him tired. Doesn't sound like that's possible, but it is. Your brain is going, and the only way you can find any kind of relief is to keep walking, and yet your body gets very tired from walking, but your brain makes you keep on walking. Suppose they got to Guilford and couldn't find Nick after all. Suppose Jenkins did not stop in Guilford, but took a road right out of it to the south, or to the north, or to the west. How would they know which road to follow? Guilford was a busy little town of stone and brick and timber clinging to the steep sides of the hill above the River Wey. It had 3 churches and a castle where the sheriff of Surrey lived, and many inns, shops, and houses. Its streets were thronged with pilgrims and merchants, both English and foreign, on their way from Southampton to London, or from Winchester to Canterbury and back again. The White Friars had a house there, and the Grey Friars too. Now remember, earlier in the book, it was White Friars and Black Friars, and we thought, well, maybe that's the clothes they wear. And this tells us, the white or gray gowns mingled on the narrow streets with bright-colored clothes of merchants and knights, and the green of the archers from the castle. So it was their clothes. And this time we've got white and gray. Plenty of dogs were there in Guilford too, hunting dogs in pairs led by huntsmen, lap dogs lolling over the arms of their mistresses, stray mongrels snapping at people's heels and dodging kicks with their tails tucked in. Now and then a spaniel trotting along busy and interested. Adam gathered fresh strength when he came into Guilford and saw all the people and the dogs. His eyes darted to the right and left whenever he saw a spaniel. His heart rose in his chest and flapped back again. How will we find him? He said to Roger. We can't stop everybody and ask. Well, "We'll try the inns and the marketplace, and then we'll go to the castle," said Roger. "It might be the Lord Sheriff would like some minstrelsy." "Let's go to the castle first," suggested Adam. "I'll bet Jenkins would go there first when he's got Nick to show off." Though he was pinning his hopes on the castle, he did not fail to look around every corner along the way and over every fence. He lagged quite a bit behind Roger and was just going to run to catch up when he glanced down a rather unpromising little lane and saw something that brought him up short, tense in every fiber. It was just a glimpse, but it was unmistakable. There at the head of the lane was the wiry figure of the minstrel Jenkins, and bulky at the end of a leash, the sturdy, silky, floppy-haired dog Nick. The next instant, they whisked out of sight behind some barrels on a wall. "There he is!" shouted Adam. "Roger, I see him!" Without waiting for an answer, off he shot down the lane, splashing through mud puddles, leaping over piles of trash. Roger, who'd not been paying attention, turned his head, but not quickly enough to see where Adam had gone. As far as he was concerned, there were now two missing, a dog and a boy. Adam ran down the lane lickety-split and turned the corner where the minstrel had disappeared so fast that he had to hold on to a barrel as he went past to keep from swinging into the wall opposite. A narrow passage went between the back of one house and a barn and pigsty that belonged to another. No one was in sight. Adam sped down the passage and came out on a little back street with brick and timber houses that seemed to be trying to touch foreheads across it. A small girl in a yellow frock came walking along with a loaf of bread in her arms, looking red in the face and cross. "Little girl," Adam called, "have you seen a minstrel with a red spaniel?" "Yes, I have. He jumped up and licked my loaf of bread. I don't like dogs." "Well, where did he go?" She pointed to a gate between two houses. "Through there." Adam flung a thank you over his shoulder and burst through the wooden gate, letting it slam behind him. Stone steps with a mossy odor went steeply down between stone walls, and at the bottom he saw the river flowing. Down he went, bounding from step to step like a stone rolling down a bumpy hill, grazing the palms of his hands on the rough walls as he used them for brakes. When he reached the bottom, he stopped and looked both ways. To the right, he saw a narrow street leading to Guilford High Street and the bridge. To the left, a little path followed the river past houses and under trees. In the distance, almost hidden by the low-hanging branches, he saw a hurrying figure and a little dog trotting behind on a leash. "Hi!" he shouted. "Hi, Jenkins!" He broke into a run. In the curve of the path, he lost Jenkins for a minute, but when it straightened out again, there was Jenkins far ahead, running fast. Soon, Adam could run no more. He'd come too far that day. When he slowed down, Jenkins walked too. So Adam pushed his way along the path by the river, seeing nothing, thinking of nothing but Jenkins and the little dog ahead. Even after Jenkins gained on him and got out of sight entirely, Adam prodded on. He was surprised when he came suddenly on a boat landing and found a group of people waiting there for the ferry. "Have you seen a minstrel and a red spaniel?" he called. A man pointed out over the river. A flat-bottomed ferry boat pulled by a man standing in the stern was halfway across. In it were 5 or 6 people sitting very close together. One of them was a thin, dark, wiry man, and in his arms a red spaniel struggled to get free. "There he is," said the man who pointed. "Came rushing up here, elbowing better folk aside, and jumped into the boat when it was full already, and people waiting for the next trip. No manners. Friend of yours?" "Nick!" shouted Adam. "Nick!" There he was. There was Nick in that boat, and every minute the strip of water between them was widening. "That's my dog!" he cried. "He took my dog!" The people on the dock at once gathered around him with exclamations and questions. "When the ferry comes back, dearie," said a pleasant-faced woman, "you can have my place, and I'll wait for the next one." When the fairy came back, by that time Jenkins would be gone and Nick with him. They were nearly to the other shore now. Adam took his harp from his shoulder and his bundle, and he unfastened his belt and wallet and took off his shoes and piled them all together. "Watch them for me," he said to the friendly woman, and then he dived. When he came up and blew the water out of his face, he heard a babble of voices on the dock behind him and saw the ferry boat with Nick and Jenkins looming high in the water far in front of him. Then he set himself to the job of swimming to the other side. The current was swifter than he expected, and his clothes were heavier. Furthermore, he had already had a long day, and he was tired. First, his arms and legs felt like lead, then they felt like knives, then his breath got short. He swallowed a tankard or more of river water and coughed it out of his eyes and his nose and his mouth, but he kept on kicking and splashing. And the next thing he knew, his knee hit something solid, and he found that he could stand up and wade the rest of the way. 5 or 6 staggering steps took him onto the bank, where he fell on his face, panted, and dripped. Soon the thought of Nick jabbed him like an arrow. He sat up, wiped his wet face with his wet sleeve, shivered a little, and looked about him. The current had carried him downstream from the landing and the road. The ferry boat was already on its way back to the shore, which he had left. He could see no one on this side, no one at all. He wrung the water out of his surcoat as best as he could, squeezed all the gay fluttering panels into wisps. He had no shoes, but his cloth hose were thick. They would serve till Roger followed with his things. The worst part, he found as he ran along the river's edge to the little landing, was the way his wet hose picked up mud and gravel and cakes. There was nobody at the landing or at the little house that stood in the garden beside it. Beyond the house was the forest. Adam looked at the narrow clay path that led straight into the thick woods of tall oaks and beech trees. Jenkins must have gone that way. There was no other way to go. So our next chapter is called The Ferryman's House, and it's chapter 12. And here's the picture. Well, we have one man looking very confused. We have a woman looking concerned, and we have a boy with no shoes on and kind of scraggly looking stockings or hose, and he's sleeping on a dog. But that dog does not look like Nick, because Nick has long hair, and this dog is short-haired. So he hasn't found Nick yet, but it looks like he had to take a nap. I understand that. I have to take a nap too every now and then. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.